The first bullet hit the piano, before Clara Wynn understood that the song had brought death into the room. One moment, the blue lantern was silent, except for rain striking the windows, and the soft, unfinished melody beneath her fingers. The next, the mirror behind the bar exploded into glittering shards. Women screamed, men dove under tables, and every gangster in the room reached for a weapon. Clara froze with both hands suspended above the keys. Across the room, the man from the black car stood in the doorway. For 3 weeks, he had been outside her apartment every night, always in the same black sedan, always after closing, always watching through tinted glass, never speaking, never approaching, never missing a performance. But now he had stepped into the light. The room changed around him. Men who had been laughing with diamonds on their wrists and guns under their jackets lowered their eyes as if a king had entered. The bartender went pale. The owner of the club whispered something that sounded almost like a prayer. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black wool coat that looked impossibly expensive and impossibly dangerous. Rain clung to his dark hair. His face was calm, beautiful in a brutal way, with sharp cheekbones, a hard jaw, light stubble, and eyes so controlled they felt almost inhuman. Then Clara saw his hands. They were shaking, not from fear, from the song. He looked at her as if she had opened a grave. "Where did you learn that melody?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but every person still breathing inside the blue lantern heard it. Clara could not answer, because the answer had been buried with her mother. Then the second bullet came through the window. The man moved before anyone else could. He crossed the room in seconds, grabbed Clara by the waist, and pulled her down just as the stained glass lamp above the piano shattered. Heat, glass, rain, screams, and gunfire folded into one terrifying blur. Clara felt his body shield hers. She felt the weight of his coat over her bare shoulders. She smelled rain, smoke, expensive cologne, and something darker. Metal, danger, power. "Stay behind me," he said. "I don't even know who you are," she gasped. His eyes lowered to hers. "You do now." Another man rushed toward the stage with a gun raised. The stranger turned, calm as winter, and fired once. Clara screamed, not because of the violence, but because of how silent he was when he did it. No panic, no hesitation, no wasted movement. He picked her up as if she weighed nothing. Broken glass sliced the stage beneath his shoes. Rain blew through the shattered front windows. Black SUVs screeched to the curb outside, doors flying open, armed men pouring into the storm. Clara fought him. "Put me down!" "No, you can't just take me." His mouth came close to her ear. "They came because of your song." Her heart stopped. He carried her through the broken club doors into the rain, past terrified musicians, past kneeling men, past bodies she refused to look at. Cameras flashed from someone's phone before one of his men crushed it beneath a polished shoe. The black sedan waited at the curb like it had always belonged to the night. The stranger lowered Clara into the back seat, then slid in beside her, shutting the door on the screams, the rain, and the life she had known. Only when the car pulled away did he speak again. "My name is Nico Vescari." Clara stared at him, shaking. Even she knew that name. Everyone in Seattle knew that name. The Vescari family owned half the docks, half the nightclubs, half the politicians, and all the silence in between. Nico Vescari was not the kind of man ordinary women met. He was the kind they heard about in whispers after someone disappeared. He was the kind of man bartenders stopped serving when he raised one finger. The kind of man police cars did not pull over. The kind of man mothers warned daughters about. And he had been sitting outside Clara's apartment every night. Nico's dark eyes stayed on her face. "That melody," he said, voice controlled, "was written by my brother the night before he was murdered." 3 weeks earlier, Clara had believed the most dangerous thing in her life was rent. Seattle had been drowning in rain for 11 straight days, the kind that turned every alley silver and every neon sign into a wound of color on the pavement. Her apartment sat above a closed tailor shop in Belltown, with one radiator that hissed like an angry cat and windows that never fully sealed out the cold. Every night, she walked 6 blocks to the Blue Lantern, carrying her mother's old leather notebook in her bag. Every night, she told herself she would stop playing in bars. And every night, the piano saved her from quitting. The Blue Lantern was not famous, not exactly. It was the kind of jazz club people discovered by accident, and then pretended they had known about for years. Downstairs, beneath a narrow street, lined with wet brick and blue neon, it smelled like whiskey, candle wax, old velvet, and secrets. The stage was small. The piano was older than the building. The patrons were a strange mix of tourists, lonely rich men, off-duty musicians, women with red lipstick, and men who never took their backs off the wall. Clara had learned not to ask questions. At 29, she had a gift people noticed too late. She was not flashy. She did not sing. She did not flirt with the room. She sat at the piano with her dark hair pinned loosely behind her neck, her black dress simple, her face calm, and played like she was telling the truth to someone who had already left. Her mother, Wynn, had taught her that. Never play to impress, June used to say. Play like there is one person in the room who might survive because of it. Clara had never understood what that meant. Not until the black car appeared. She noticed it first on a Thursday after closing. A black sedan parked across from her apartment, engine running, headlights off. It was still there at 2 a.m., rain sliding over the windshield. She paused beneath the awning of the tailor shop and stared at it. The rear window was tinted. She could see nothing. The next night, it was there again. Then the next. By the 6th night, Clara changed her route home. The car followed at a distance. By the 8th night, she bought pepper spray from a drugstore and slept with it under her pillow. By the 10th, she told Miles, the owner of the Blue Lantern. "I can call a rideshare," Grace said. Miles was in his 60s, thin, elegant, and always looked as if he had once known someone powerful enough to ruin him. When Clara described the car, he stopped polishing a glass. What kind of car? Black sedan. Expensive. Driver in front. Someone in back. Miles did not look at her. "You don't talk to him." Clara's skin chilled. "So you know who it is. I know enough to tell you not to talk to him." Miles. He set the glass down carefully. "Clara, some men are not strangers. They're weather. You don't argue with weather. You get indoors." That night, she played badly. Her fingers slipped. Her timing faltered. Every time someone opened the club door, she looked up. By midnight, the room had filled with the usual low hum of money and sadness, but a different kind of silence entered with the rain. She felt him before she saw him. The black sedan was parked outside the club across the street. A man sat in the back seat, still, waiting, watching. Clara could not see his face, but she felt the attention like a hand between her shoulder blades. Instead of stopping, she played harder. Old standards, blue notes, storm music. Anything that did not belong to her. Anything that could not expose what lived inside the notebook in her bag. The notebook was the only thing her mother had left behind. Besides debt and a voicemail Clara still could not delete. Wynn had died 8 months earlier, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and lilies. Lung cancer had taken her voice first, then her strength, then the last of her secrets. On her final day, when rain pressed against the glass and Clara held her hand, June had pulled her close. "If anyone ever asks about the blue song," she whispered, "say you don't know it." Clara had leaned in, terrified. What blue song? But her mother was already slipping away. After the funeral, Clara found the notebook hidden behind a loose panel inside June's upright piano. It was filled with handwritten charts, old lyrics, fragments of melodies, names crossed out, dates circled, and one unfinished composition written in 2 different hands. At the top of the page were 3 words. Blue Mercy, unfinished. Clara had tried to play it once, only once. The melody had made her cry before she reached the end. It was beautiful, but wrong somehow, like a love song written beside a body. It began gently, almost like a lullaby, then bent into something darker, The final 8 measures were missing. Below the last staff, someone had written a sentence in sharp black ink. "If I don't come home, make sure she hears it." There was no signature. Clara had never played it in public, until the storm. The night everything changed began with a power flicker. Rain slammed against the blue lantern so hard, the windows trembled. Only 20 people had come in, most of them regulars. Miles kept looking toward the door. A table of men in black coats sat near the back and spoke in low voices. They were not tourists. Clara knew that before she saw the guns beneath their jackets. At 1:43 a.m., the black sedan pulled up outside. At 1:56, Clara saw Miles make the sign of the cross. At 2:07, a drunk man at the bar requested something sad enough to ruin him. Clara smiled faintly, though her hands were cold. Then, without deciding to, she opened her mother's notebook. The page fell naturally to blue mercy. For a moment, Clara only stared. The club noise blurred, the rain softened. Her mother's handwriting seemed to darken under the amber stage light. "If anyone ever asks about the blue song, say you don't know it." Clara should have closed the book. Instead, she placed her fingers on the keys. The first notes came out like breath. People kept talking at first. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed near the bar. Then the melody shifted, sinking into that strange minor turn, and conversations faded one by one. The men in black coats stopped speaking. Miles turned white. The club door opened. Clara did not look up. She could not. The song had become a hallway, and somewhere at the end of it, a dead man was waiting. When she reached the missing measures, her hands improvised what her heart heard. A final phrase rose from the left hand, low and aching. The right hand answered with 3 notes so tender, they felt like forgiveness. And that was when Nico Vescari stepped inside. He was more frightening in person than he had been as a shadow behind glass. Not because he looked cruel, because he did not need to. He stood in the doorway with rain on his coat, black hair brushed back from his face, his expression carved from discipline. His suit was dark, perfectly fitted, but beneath the open collar of his black shirt, Clara saw the edge of tattoos climbing his throat. Black and gray ink disappearing beneath the fabric, spreading over his chest and wrists like something ancient and violent. Every gangster in the room lowered his eyes. Nico did not look at them. He looked only at Clara, and his hands shook. The attack came seconds later. Now, inside Nico's speeding car, Clara clutched the notebook against her chest, while Seattle blurred past in streaks of silver and red. Nico sat beside her, separated by 6 inches that felt more dangerous than the gunfire. Rainwater darkened his coat. A thin cut marked his cheek. He did not touch it. He did not look shaken anymore. Only his eyes betrayed him. They kept going to the notebook. Clara tightened her grip. "You've been following me," she said. Yes. No denial, no apology. Her fear sharpened into anger. Why? "Because 3 weeks ago, you played 4 notes after closing. 4 notes no one alive should know. I didn't know what they were. That is the problem." She laughed once, brittle and disbelieving. "You stalked me because of a song?" His gaze moved slowly to hers. "I killed a man last year because he hummed it in the wrong room." Clara stopped breathing. Nico leaned slightly closer, not enough to touch her, enough that the warmth of him reached through the cold. "So understand me when I say this carefully, Clara Wynn. That notebook may be the reason my brother is dead, and now it may be the reason men came to kill you." The car turned toward the waterfront. Black SUVs followed behind them in a silent procession. Clara looked through the rear window and saw headlights cutting through rain like blades. "I want to go home," she said. "No. You don't get to say no. I do tonight." Her eyes burned. "You can't keep me." Nico's expression did not change. "I can keep you alive." The penthouse was at the top of a glass tower overlooking Elliott Bay, where the city lights trembled on black water and ferries moved like ghosts through rain. The elevator opened directly into a private foyer guarded by 2 men with earpieces and expressionless faces. Clara stepped out barefoot, because one of her heels had broken in the attack. Her dress was torn near the hem. Blood marked her knee from where glass had cut her. She hated that Nico noticed. He said something in Italian to one of his men. A woman appeared with a medical kit. "No," Clara said immediately. Nico paused. The woman looked at him, waiting. Clara lifted her chin. "I can clean a cut myself." For the first time, something almost like interest crossed Nico's face. "Leave the kit," he said. The woman obeyed. The penthouse was not what Clara expected. No gold statues, no vulgar display. It was worse because it was tasteful. Dark wood, low light, floor-to-ceiling windows, a black grand piano near the glass overlooking the water, shelves of old records, a fireplace burning without warmth. Everything expensive, quiet, controlled. Like him. Clara noticed cameras in the corners. "You brought me to a cage. I brought you somewhere bullets have a harder time finding you." Romantic. His eyes narrowed slightly. She had not meant to sound brave. She was terrified. But anger was the only thing keeping her upright. Nico removed his coat and handed it to one of his men. Without it, the tattoos were more visible. They covered his throat, disappeared beneath his shirt, wrapped around his wrists and hands in intricate black and gray patterns. Roses, saints, knives, scripture in Italian, and one date inked near his collarbone. Clara could not stop seeing the way his hands had shaken. "Who was your brother?" she asked. The room went still. One guard looked away. Nico walked to the windows. For a moment, his reflection stood beside the city, both of them dark and unreachable. "Elias Vescari," he said. "He played piano before he learned to hold a gun. He hated our family business. He believed music could make him clean." There was bitterness in his voice, but beneath it was grief so tightly locked away it sounded almost like anger. "What happened to him?" "He was found in a burned car near the docks 5 years ago." Clara swallowed. Nico turned. "The night before he died, he called me." I didn't answer. The confession landed softly, brutally. Clara's anger shifted despite herself. "He left a message?" "No. Just 15 seconds of piano." "Blue Mercy," she whispered. His eyes sharpened. She looked down at the notebook. "That's what it's called." Nico crossed the room so quickly she stepped back. "Show me." "No." He stopped. No one in the room moved. Clara felt every guard staring at her as if she had slapped him. Nico's voice lowered. "Clara, you don't get to drag me out of my life, lock me in your tower, and demand the only thing my mother left me." A muscle moved in his jaw. "She may have known my brother. Then maybe you should ask like a human being instead of a man deciding what he owns." The silence after that was enormous. One of his guards actually looked frightened for her. Nico stared at Clara for a long moment. Then he said, "Please." The word sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Clara hated that it worked. She opened the notebook but did not hand it over. Nico moved closer, standing beside her as she turned to the page. He was careful not to touch her. That made the nearness worse. His eyes moved over the notes. The control in his face cracked for less than a second. But Clara saw it. The grief, the recognition, the wound that had never closed. His fingers hovered over the page, then stopped before touching it. "That's his handwriting," he said. "And my mother's. June Wynn." Clara looked up sharply. "You knew her?" "No." But it came too fast. She stepped away. Nico's gaze followed her, and something cold returned to it. "My brother used to disappear on Thursday nights," he said. "No guards, no driver, no explanation. We thought he was meeting a woman. My mother. I don't know. Were they involved?" His eyes flashed. I said I don't know. For some reason, that hurt. Clara closed the notebook. Nico's phone rang before either of them could speak again. He answered, listened, then looked toward the windows. "What?" Clara asked. He ended the call. "Your apartment is gone." The world tilted. "What do you mean gone?" "Fire." "No." Clara shook her head. "No. I need to." They were looking for the notebook. My mother's piano was there. Nico said nothing. My photos, her records, her clothes. I'll replace what can be replaced. That sentence cut through her grief like a blade. Clara slapped him. The sound cracked through the penthouse. Guards moved. Nico lifted one hand, and they froze. Clara's palm stung. Tears blurred her vision. "You can't replace the dead," she said. Nico looked at her for a long time. Then, very quietly, he said, "I know." That was the first night Clara cried in Nico Vescari's penthouse. Not in front of him. She waited until he left her in a guest room larger than her entire apartment, with silk sheets she refused to touch, and windows overlooking a city that suddenly felt foreign. She locked the door, though she knew it meant nothing, then sat on the floor with her mother's notebook pressed to her chest and wept until she could not breathe. At 4 a.m., she heard piano through the wall. One note, then another. Not Blue Mercy. Something simpler, older. A child practicing scales. Clara opened the door. The penthouse was dim, blue with pre-dawn rain. Nico sat at the grand piano, sleeves rolled to his forearms, tattoos stark against his skin. He played badly. No, not badly. Carefully. Like every note hurt him. He stopped when he saw her. "I thought mafia bosses didn't play lullabies," she said, her voice raw. His hands rested on the keys. "Elias tried to teach me. Were you terrible?" "Yes." The answer was so flat she almost smiled. Almost. She walked closer, stopping several feet away. The city glowed behind him. He looked less like a monster in that hour, though maybe that was the dangerous part. "You knew I was awake," she said. "Yes." "You wanted me to hear." "Yes." "Why?" His eyes lifted to hers. "Because grief is quieter when someone else is in the room." Clara hated him a little less for that. The next morning, Nico began turning her life into a fortress. A driver, 2 guards, a new phone, clothes she had not asked for, a lawyer to handle the fire report, a private doctor she refused to see until Nico left the room. Clara fought every piece of it, because accepting his protection felt too close to surrender. He never raised his voice. That made him worse. "No," she said when he told her she could not return to the Blue Lantern. "No," he replied. "It's my job. It was shot apart. I need money. You don't." Her eyes narrowed. "Finish that sentence carefully." Nico looked up from his phone. They were in his kitchen, though calling it a kitchen felt insulting. It was marble, steel, glass, and silence. Clara wore borrowed jeans and a black sweater that fit too well to be random. He said, "You are under my protection. I am not your property." "No." His gaze moved over her face. "If you were, this would be easier." The words should have terrified her. They did. But something else moved beneath the fear. A pull. Dark, unwilling, dangerous. She turned away first. Later that day, Clara found the surveillance room. It was behind a locked door, but the lock had not clicked fully. She had been looking for a bathroom and found a wall of screens instead. The Blue Lantern, the street outside her apartment, the alley behind the club, her old building before the fire, elevator feeds, dock cameras, a grainy angle of the tailor shop entrance where she had stood night after night beneath rain. And there she was, on one screen. Clara Wynn walked home alone from 3 nights ago, hugging her coat around herself, unaware she was being watched by at least 4 cameras and 1 black sedan. Her stomach turned. Nico appeared behind her. She did not turn around. "How long?" she asked. "Since I heard the 4 notes." "You watched me sleep? No cameras inside your apartment. That's supposed to comfort me." "No." She turned then, furious. "You are sick." His face hardened. "Men were already watching you before I was. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to survive long enough to hate me properly." She shoved past him. He caught her wrist. Not hard. Just enough. The contact went through her like electricity. Clara looked down at his tattooed hand around her wrist, then up at him. "Let go." He did immediately. The speed of it startled her. His voice was low. "I don't touch women who tell me not to." Something in her chest twisted because she believed him. She wished she did not. "Then stop controlling me." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" "No." His eyes were cold, but something underneath them was not. "I mean I can't. Not until I know why Sebastian Crow wants you dead." The name meant nothing to her. It should have. Sebastian Crow arrived that evening wearing a gray suit, silver cufflinks, and the kind of smile men used in courtrooms and funerals. He was older than Nico by 20 years, handsome in a polished way, with pale eyes and perfectly combed hair. He kissed Clara's hand before she could stop him. "Nico didn't mention how lovely you were," Sebastian said. Nico's voice cut across the room. "Take your hand off her." Sebastian released her with a small smile. "Protective already?" Nico did not answer. Clara looked between them and understood immediately that Sebastian was not just an employee. He was family without blood, a man who had known Nico as a boy, a man who had helped build whatever empire now surrounded them. Sebastian's gaze moved to the notebook on the table. Clara closed her hand over it. His smile deepened by one careful degree. "I hear we have music to thank for last night's chaos." "I hear men with guns are usually more responsible," Clara said. Nico looked at her. Sebastian laughed softly. "She has a tongue. She has a name," Nico said. The air shifted. Clara felt it then, the thread of possessiveness in Nico's voice, quiet but unmistakable. Not romance, not softness. Something darker, a warning. Sebastian noticed too. His eyes sharpened. "May I see the notebook?" he asked. "No," Clara said. Nico watched Sebastian as Clara answered. For 1 second, the older man's smile failed. Only one, but Nico saw it. That night, he came to Clara's room after midnight. He knocked once. She opened the door with the chain on. His mouth almost curved. "You think that would stop me?" "No. I think it would insult you if you broke it." A pause. Then he said, "You're learning." She hated the warmth that flickered through her. "What do you want?" Sebastian lied tonight. "About what?" He said he first heard about the song after the attack. "And?" "I never told him there was a song." Clara's fingers tightened around the door. Nico's eyes were darker than the hallway behind him. "I need you to do something dangerous." "No. You haven't heard what it is." "I heard the word dangerous." "I need you to play Blue Mercy in public." She stared at him. "You're insane." "Yes? No." "Clara, they shot up a bar the last time I played it. This time, I'll control the room." "You can't control everything." His expression turned very still. "No," he said. "That's why people die." The honesty disarmed her. He looked past her, into the room, not entering. "There is a charity gala in 2 nights at the Rainier Club. Half the city's money will be there. Politicians, port executives, men who pay Sebastian, men who fear me. You'll play 1 song, so I'm bait." "Yes." Again, no lie. Clara laughed softly, bitterly. "You really don't know how to make a woman feel special." His gaze returned to her face. "I know exactly how to make you feel special. That's why I'm not doing it." The silence between them changed shape. Her pulse moved into her throat. Nico stepped closer to the door, not touching it. "If I wanted to manipulate you, Clara, I'd tell you I need you. I'd tell you my brother's ghost won't rest without you. I'd tell you no one else can help me. All true, all useful," she whispered. "Then why not say it?" His eyes dropped briefly to her mouth, then rose again. "Because you deserve to know when a man is using you." "And are you?" "Yes." The answer hurt more than it should have. Then he added, "But I'll burn the city before I let them hurt you." That was the problem with Nico Vescari. His cruelty sounded like truth, his protection sounded like a threat, and Clara was beginning to feel safer inside his danger than outside it. The Rainier Club Gala looked like old money pretending it had never touched blood. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, champagne towers, men in tuxedos, women in silk, rain tapping the tall windows while Seattle's elite raised money for a children's arts foundation, funded by people who destroyed families before breakfast. Clara wore a midnight blue gown Nico had sent to her room. She almost refused it. Then she saw herself in the mirror. For years, she had dressed to disappear behind pianos and dim bar lights. Tonight, the woman staring back looked like a secret sharpened into elegance. The dress covered enough to feel dignified, but the dark silk moved with her like water. Her hair was pinned softly, Her only jewelry was her mother's small silver ring. When she stepped into the living room, Nico stopped speaking. He looked at her only once. That was enough. His control did not break, exactly. It tightened. Clara felt it across the room. "Will I pass as bait?" she asked. His eyes lifted from the dress to her face. "You'll pass as mine." Heat climbed her throat. "I'm not." "No." He took a step closer. "But they need to think you are. Fake relationship? Public protection. That sounds like ownership with better lighting. It is safer than honesty." At the gala, Nico kept one hand at the small of Clara's back without quite resting it there. Always near, never fully touching. It drove her mad. The heat of his palm hovered through the silk like a decision he refused to make. Every head turned when they entered. Clara heard whispers. "Nico Vescari. Who is she? Is that the pianist? Didn't his club get shot up?" Nico ignored them all. But he noticed everything. The exits, the balconies, the waiters, the men who looked too long at Clara, the woman in emerald silk who approached him with a smile too intimate to be harmless. "Nico," she said. He inclined his head. "Vivian." Clara felt the name land between them. Vivian was stunning, blonde, composed, with diamonds at her throat and history in her eyes. Her gaze moved to Clara. "So it's true," Vivian said. "The ghost finally found a muse." Clara smiled politely. "The muse has a name." Vivian's smile cooled. Nico's hand finally touched Clara's back. "Possessive, brief, burning. Clara Wynn," he said. "Remember it." Vivian looked amused but wounded. "Careful, Clara Wynn. Men like Nico don't love women. They haunt them." Clara looked up at him. Nico's face gave nothing away, but his hand left her back. The gala performance began at 10. Clara sat at a white grand piano beneath the chandelier, the notebook hidden in her memory because she had refused to bring it. Nico stood near the wall, with his men positioned around the room. Sebastian Crow stood beside the mayor, smiling like a saint. Clara began with a standard, then another. Applause came politely. She looked at Nico. He gave no signal, but she knew. Her fingers moved into blue mercy. The effect was immediate. A glass shattered somewhere near the bar. Sebastian stopped smiling. Nico's eyes never left Clara. The melody filled the ballroom slowly, tenderly, devastatingly. People who did not know why they were afraid still stopped breathing. Clara played the missing ending she had created, and as she did, she saw Sebastian turn toward a man near the service doors. A signal. Nico saw it too. The lights went out. Screams rose in the dark. A hand grabbed Clara from behind. She slammed her elbow back and heard a grunt. Someone yanked her off the piano bench. Her shoulder hit the floor. She kicked, tearing her dress. A hand clamped over her mouth. Then the man was gone, ripped away. When the emergency lights flashed red, Nico stood over her attacker with a gun in his hand and murder in his eyes. Clara had never seen him lose control. Not until that moment. He was breathing hard, but not from effort, from restraint. The attacker was alive, only because Clara was watching. Nico looked at her on the floor. Everything violent in him shifted direction. He knelt. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. His hand lifted toward her face, then stopped, inches away. Almost touched. Didn't. Clara. The way he said her name frightened her more than the attack, because it sounded like something inside him had chosen. By midnight, photos were everywhere. Nico Vescari kneeling beside the mysterious pianist. Nico Vescari escorting Clara Wynn out of the Rainier Club with his coat over her shoulders. Nico Vescari staring at her as if the rest of Seattle could burn unnoticed. The headlines called her his lover by morning. Clara threw the tablet onto the penthouse sofa. Fantastic. Now I'm publicly connected to a criminal empire. Nico stood near the window, phone in hand. You're publicly untouchable. Those are not the same thing. They are in my world. I don't live in your world. He turned. You do now. The words detonated. No, Clara said. I got dragged into your grief, your surveillance, your enemies, your fake relationship, and your war. But I do not belong to you. Nico's expression hardened. I know that. do you? Yes. Because you keep looking at me, like you're deciding whether to protect me or lock me away forever. His silence answered too clearly. Clara's voice dropped. Oh my God. Nico looked away. That scared her. Because men like him did not look away unless the truth was worse than the accusation. She stepped closer. You thought about it? No. Nico. His jaw clenched. I thought about what would keep you alive. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give without becoming exactly what you think I am. For a moment, neither moved. Rain trailed down the glass behind him. Seattle looked distant and unreal. Clara's anger trembled into something more fragile. What do you want from me? He laughed once, softly, without humor. At first, the notebook. And now, his eyes came back to hers. The room seemed to narrow around them. Now I want 10 impossible things before breakfast. Her voice was barely audible. Name one. Nico stepped closer, slowly enough for her to retreat. She did not. I want you to stop flinching when my phone rings. I want you to sleep without a chair against your door. I want the men who burned your apartment to understand fear as a language. I want my brother's name cleared. I want Sebastian Crow on his knees. He stopped in front of her. And I want to touch your face without wondering if I'm taking something you don't want to give. Clara's breath caught. He did not touch her. That was what undid her. Not his power, not his wealth, not the way everyone feared him. His restraint. She lifted her hand and placed it over his wrist. Nico went completely still. Then, carefully, as if approaching a flame, he raised his hand to her cheek. His thumb brushed once beneath her eye. Clara closed her eyes despite herself. The penthouse disappeared. The danger disappeared. For one suspended second, there was only his hand, warm and steady now, and the unbearable tenderness of a man trying not to become a monster in front of her. Then his phone rang. Nico stepped back immediately. The loss of contact felt like cold air. He answered. His face changed. What? Clara asked. Nico ended the call, eyes dark. Miles is missing. The Blue Lantern had been boarded up since the shooting, but Nico's men found blood near the back entrance and Miles's broken glasses in the alley. Clara insisted on going. Nico refused. She went anyway by stealing the keys to one of his guest elevators and making it as far as the lobby before 3 guards blocked her. Nico arrived 2 minutes later, fury contained behind a calm face. Upstairs, he said. No, Clara. Miles is the closest thing I have to family, and you think I don't understand that? I think you understand revenge better than love. The words hit him. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shut down. He turned to his guards. Bring the car. Clara expected Victory to feel better. They found Miles in an abandoned rehearsal space beneath an old theater near Pioneer Square. He was tied to a chair, beaten but alive, with a note pinned to his shirt. Give us the notebook, or the pianist plays her last song. Clara's hands shook as Nico cut Miles free. Miles looked at her through swollen eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? His face crumpled. Your mother told me to protect you. The room went silent. Nico turned slowly. Clara knelt in front of Miles. You knew my mother. Miles began to cry. June came to me 5 years ago with a baby in her arms and terror in her eyes. Clara could not move. A baby? Nico said. Miles looked at him then, and fear entered his face. Elias's daughter. Nico went white. Not pale. White. Like the blood had left him. Clara gripped the chair. What are you talking about? Miles swallowed hard. Elias had a child. A little girl. Her mother was killed 2 days before Elias died. June helped hide the baby. She said if anyone found out, they'd kill the child to control the inheritance. Nico's voice was deadly soft. Where is she? I don't know. June moved her through a private witness network. She never told me the final name. Clara's mind flashed to the notebook. If I don't come home, make sure she hears it. Not Clara, the child. The song was not only grief, it was a map, a lullaby, a proof of blood. Nico walked away, one hand pressed against the wall, head bowed. For the first time, Clara saw him not as a mafia boss, not as danger, not as the man who had watched her from a black car. She saw him as a brother, learning he had failed someone twice. She approached slowly. "Nico, don't. I'm sorry." He laughed under his breath, broken and cold. "My brother had a daughter, and I spent 5 years turning the city inside out for revenge, while she grew up without us. You didn't know. I should have." His hand slammed into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Clara did not flinch. He noticed. His anger collapsed into something worse. "Go back to the car," he said. "No. Clara, go back to the car. Stop pushing me away every time you feel something." His eyes turned on her, raw and dangerous. "You think this is feeling?" he asked. "This is what comes before men die. Then let them." The words shocked both of them. Clara stepped closer. "But don't make me pay for what they did." Nico looked at her for a long time. Then he reached out and took her hand. Not possessively, not for show, like he was falling and hated needing something to hold. The notebook revealed itself piece by piece. Back at the penthouse, Clara spread the pages across Nico's dining table, while Miles slept under guard in the guest room. Nico stood beside her, silent, watching as she compared musical notes, dates, and the strange marks her mother had made in the margins. Letters beneath chords, numbers hidden in rests, dock names disguised as lyrics. Pier 9, Container B17, St. Agnes, LW. Nico recognized the first two immediately. Pier 9 was where Elias's car was found. And B17? A container that disappeared the same night. What was in it? He looked at her. Money, bearer bonds, enough to buy loyalty from every family on the West Coast. Clara pointed to the final initials. LW? Nico shook his head. Then Miles, standing weakly in the doorway, whispered, "Lily Wynn." Clara turned. Miles leaned against the frame, face bruised, eyes haunted. June gave the baby her last name. The room seemed to tilt. Clara looked down at the notebook, then back at Miles. "Where is she?" "I swear I don't know." But Nico was watching him too carefully. Miles closed his eyes. "There's a woman in Tacoma, former federal marshal. June trusted her. Her name is Ruth Bell." Within an hour, Nico's convoy was moving south through rain. Clara sat beside him in the back of the SUV, the notebook between them. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, she said, "If Lily is real, what happens to her?" Nico looked out at the highway. "She gets protected. By you. Yes. What if she doesn't want your world? She's a child. She'll grow." His reflection in the dark window looked tired. "Then I'll build a door out." Clara studied him. "Can you?" He turned to her. "For her? Yes. For yourself." The answer did not come. That was answer enough. Ruth Bell lived in a small blue house near the water, with wind chimes on the porch and security cameras hidden under the eaves. She opened the door holding a shotgun. Nico's men raised their weapons. Clara stepped in front of him. "Everyone stop." Nico's hand caught her waist and pulled her back half an inch, just enough to put his body between hers and the gun. Ruth's eyes moved from Clara to Nico. "No," the older woman said. "Absolutely not." Nico's voice was calm. "Where is my niece?" "She is not your niece tonight. She is a child asleep upstairs." Something broke in his face. Just for a second. Clara saw it, and so did Ruth. The shotgun lowered slightly. A floorboard creaked above them. A little girl appeared at the top of the stairs in pink pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit by one ear. She had dark hair, solemn eyes, and a face that made Nico stop breathing. Elias's face. Clara knew it without ever having seen him alive. The child looked at the armed men, then at Clara. "Are you the piano lady?" Clara's eyes filled. "I think so. My grandma June said you'd come, if the blue song woke up." Nico turned away sharply, but not before Clara saw tears in his eyes. He did not let them fall. Men like Nico Vescari could bleed before they cried, but his hands shook again. Lily came downstairs because Ruth allowed it, not because Nico commanded anything. That mattered. Clara noticed how he stayed back, how he crouched only when the little girl approached, making himself smaller than his power. "What's your name?" Lily asked him. "Nico. My dad had a brother named Nico." His voice nearly failed. He did. Do you know my dad? Yes. Was he nice? Nico swallowed. He was the best of us. Lily considered this, then held out the stuffed rabbit. You can hold Mr. Blue if you're sad. Nico stared at the toy like it was a loaded weapon. Clara gently took it and placed it in his hand. Their fingers brushed. This time, neither pulled away quickly. The moment lasted too long. Ruth saw it. So did Sebastian Crow's sniper through the window. The shot hit the glass. Nico moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed Lily with one arm, Clara with the other, and drove them both to the floor as the window exploded over them. Ruth fired back. Nico's men stormed the porch. Lily screamed against his chest while Clara shielded the child's head with her own body. Stay down, Nico ordered. But Clara saw the red dot move across his shoulder. Nico, she shoved him. The bullet tore through the wall where his head had been. His eyes locked on hers. For one heartbeat, he looked furious. Not because she had touched him, because she had almost died saving him. The safe house burned behind them as they fled toward the coast. Nico put Lily in a separate armored SUV with Ruth and 4 guards, then forced Clara into his car despite her protests. She needs me, Clara said. She needs to disappear again. Don't do this. Nico shut the door, then got in beside her. His face was colder than she had ever seen it. What are you planning? She asked. He did not answer. Nico, Sebastian won't stop while the child lives. So we protect her. No, I end him. The difference chilled her. With me as bait again? His silence confirmed it. Clara stared at him. You knew he'd follow us. Yes. You let him find Lily? I let him believe he found her. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. She moved as far from him as the seat allowed. You used a child. I used a convoy pattern. Lily is already being moved under another route. You should have told me. If you knew, you might have acted differently. So you used me too. His jaw tightened. Yes, there it was again. Truth with no mercy. Clara turned away before he could see what it did to her. For the first time since the Blue Lantern, she wished she had never played the song. Nico did not touch her. That almost made it worse. The final trap was set inside the abandoned St. Agnes Theater, a ruined landmark near the waterfront, where rain came through the broken roof, and old velvet seats rotted in the dark. Elias had played there as a teenager before the Vescari name became too heavy for ordinary dreams. Sebastian believed Clara would trade the notebook for Miles. He believed Nico was desperate. He believed grief made men predictable. He was wrong about many things, but not about Clara. She went because Sebastian sent a video of Miles with a gun to his head. Nico forbade it. Clara went anyway. This time, she left him a note. You were right. You use people to protect them. I use myself. She expected Nico to be furious. She did not expect him to look afraid when he found her at the theater. But by then, Sebastian was already there. He stood on the ruined stage beneath a collapsed chandelier, wearing a black overcoat and leather gloves. Miles knelt beside the piano, bruised but alive. Armed men lined the balconies. Rain fell through the ceiling in silver threads. Clara stood at center stage with her mother's notebook in hand. You came alone, Sebastian said. I came with what you wanted. He smiled. Brave girl. No, tired one. His smile thinned. You have caused a great deal of trouble for a woman who plays songs in basements. And you murdered a man because he wrote one. Sebastian's eyes hardened. For the first time, the mask slipped. Elias was weak. He wanted to take the family legitimate. He wanted to hand the docs to federal prosecutors, run away with a singer, raise his child in some clean little life. His mouth twisted. Men like that get people killed. You killed him. I corrected him. A sound came from the shadows. Nico. Clara turned. He stood at the back of the theater, alone, soaked from the rain, black coat open, tattoos visible at his throat and hands. No army, no visible weapon. Just the most dangerous man in Seattle, walking through a ruined aisle like death had finally chosen a side. Sebastian smiled. You always were dramatic. Nico's eyes did not leave Clara. Not Sebastian. Clara. There was anger there. Terror, too. And something deeper. Something that made her chest ache. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. His voice was quiet. "I tried not to need you alive." The theater seemed to hold its breath. "I failed." Sebastian laughed. "Touching." Nico finally looked at him. "You killed my brother." "Yes." "Say it again." Sebastian's smile faltered. Nico walked closer. "Say his name." Elias was a traitor. Nico's face went utterly calm. That was when Clara knew the violence had already begun. Gunfire erupted from the balconies. Nico moved. Clara dropped behind the piano, pulling Miles down with her. The ruined theater exploded into muzzle flashes and screams. Men burst through the side doors. Nico's men, after all, hidden in the rain, waiting for Sebastian to confess into the recording device Clara had placed inside the notebook binding. Betrayal met trap. Trap met war. Sebastian grabbed Clara during the chaos. His arm locked around her throat, gun pressed to her temple. Everything stopped. Nico stood 10 feet away, gun raised. For the first time, Clara saw him truly afraid. Not angry, not controlled. Afraid. Sebastian noticed and smiled. "There it is," he whispered. "The great Nico Vescari finally has a weakness." Nico lowered his gun. Clara's eyes widened. "Nico, no." Sebastian dragged her backward toward the stage exit. "On your knees." Nico knelt. The sight shocked the room into silence. The most feared man in Seattle lowered himself onto the wet, broken floor for her. Clara's heart cracked open. Sebastian's voice trembled with triumph. "Love makes animals out of kings." Nico's eyes stayed on Clara. "No," he said softly. "Love reminds them what they're willing to become." Clara understood a second before he moved. She drove her heel into Sebastian's foot, twisted hard, and dropped. Nico's gun came up. One shot shattered Sebastian's weapon. Another hit the chandelier chain above him. The rusted iron frame crashed down between them, trapping Sebastian beneath metal and dust, but leaving him alive. Alive enough to face justice. Alive enough to rot with the truth. Nico reached Clara through the wreckage. He pulled her into his arms so hard she almost could not breathe. For once, she did not fight him. His hand cradled the back of her head. His heart hammered against her cheek. "You came alone," he said into her hair, voice shaking. "So did you." "No." His grip tightened. "I came with every piece of me I had left." Miles survived. Sebastian Crow did not die that night. Nico made sure of it. Not because he lacked the violence to end him, but because Clara had once told him revenge was not the same as love, and somehow, impossibly, he had listened. The recording of Sebastian's confession went to a federal prosecutor Nico trusted, only because he feared Nico more than money. The press called it the largest organized crime betrayal in Seattle's history. The Vescari family fractured, then reorganized, quietly, brutally. With Nico at the center, colder to the world than before, but different in one dangerous way. He no longer pretended he had nothing to lose. Lily disappeared again, this time with Ruth, Miles, and enough protection to guard a president. Nico visited once a month from a distance, until Ruth decided he had earned the porch. Clara went with him the first time. Lily made him play scales. He was still terrible. Clara laughed so hard she cried. 3 months after the shooting, the Blue Lantern reopened, not as it had been, better. Nico bought the building through 6 shell companies and denied it so badly that Clara almost kissed him in the office, just to shut him up. Miles returned behind the bar, slower now, but smiling. A framed photograph of Wynn hung near the stage. Beneath it, in small gold letters, someone had engraved, "Play like someone might survive because of it." On opening night, the club filled beyond capacity. Rain softened the windows. Blue neon glowed on the sidewalk. Reporters waited outside, but Nico's men kept them across the street. Inside, the room was candlelit, intimate, alive. Clara sat at the piano in a simple black dress. For the first time in her life, she did not feel invisible. Nico sat alone at the table nearest the stage, not outside. Not hidden behind tinted glass, inside, where she could see him. He wore black, of course. His expression was unreadable to everyone else. But Clara knew better now. She knew the slight tension near his mouth meant he was nervous. She knew the stillness in his hands meant he was feeling too much. She knew that beneath the collar of his shirt, over the date inked for his brother, he had added one new line of script. Blue mercy. Miles dimmed the lights. The room quieted. Clara began to play Elias's song. This time, it did not sound like a grave opening. It sounded like rain letting go of a window. The melody moved through grief, through betrayal. Through every night Nico had sat outside her apartment, not knowing whether he was hunting the truth or being led back to life. It carried June's secret, Elias's love, Lily's future, Miles's guilt, Sebastian's ruin, and Clara's own heart, bruised, stubborn, still playing. When she reached the unfinished ending, she did not improvise. She played the final measures Elias had hidden in the notebook code, the part meant for his daughter, soft, hopeful, almost unbearably gentle. Nico closed his eyes. One tear fell. Only one. No one else seemed to notice. Clara did. When the song ended, the room remained silent for 3 long seconds. Then applause rose like weather breaking. Clara stood, but her eyes stayed on Nico. He did not clap. He stood, slowly. In front of everyone, the Mafia Boss feared across Seattle walked to the stage. Men watched. Women whispered. Cameras lifted. Nico ignored them all. At the edge of the stage, he looked up at Clara. For once, she was above him. She liked that. He seemed to as well. "You finished it," he said. "No," Clara replied. "I think we did." His eyes softened in a way only she would recognize. He offered his hand. Not demanding. Not taking. Asking. Clara looked at it, tattooed and dangerous. The hand of a man who had carried her through glass and rain, lied to her, protected her, used her, changed for her, knelt for her, and learned, slowly, painfully, that love could not be owned without being destroyed. She placed her hand in his. The club erupted again, louder this time, but Clara barely heard it. Nico helped her down from the stage. His mouth came close to her ear. "I'm still not a good man. I know. I'll still have enemies. I know. I'll still want to lock every door between you and the world." She looked up at him. "But you won't." His thumb moved once over her knuckles. "No," he said. "I'll sit outside until you invite me in." Clara smiled. "You're already inside." For a moment, the feared Nico Vescari looked almost lost. Then he bent his head and kissed her. Not like a man claiming property. Not like a king taking tribute. Like a man who had been standing in the rain for years and had finally found a door open. Outside, Seattle kept falling silver and cold. Black cars waited at the curb. Danger still breathed in the alleys. The city had not become safe. Love had not made Nico harmless. But inside the blue lantern, beneath blue light and old jazz and the ghost of a song that had refused to die, Clara Wynn held the hand of the most dangerous man in Seattle and understood the truth her mother had tried to leave behind. Some songs summon ghosts. Some songs expose monsters. And some songs teach a man who has forgotten his own heart how to come home.